Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack something that is absolutely foundational for modern software development. We're talking about Docker, and this is your complete guide to containerization. You know, whether you're a solo dev just trying to keep your projects organized, or maybe you're part of a massive team that's struggling with complex deployments, understanding Docker is literally a superpower. So let's get right into it.
It works on my machine. I mean, those have got to be the foremost dreaded words in all of software development, right? We've all been there. You build this brilliant feature, you test it locally, it runs flawlessly. But the exact second it goes to a colleague's machine or a staging server, absolute chaos. And why does that happen? Well, usually because that other machine has a totally different Node.js version, or it's missing some random system packages. So what's the solution here? Are you going to box up your entire laptop and ship it to the customer? No way. Enter Docker. Docker is our hero in this story, and it was designed specifically to eliminate this exact pain point once and for all.
So here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start with the containerization revolution, then move right into core Docker concepts. After that, we'll talk about connecting the moving parts, tackle development versus production, and finally wrap up with common mistakes and myths.
All right, part one, the containerization revolution. Let's see exactly what this technology is all about.
So what exactly is this tech that literally changed the software world? Well, here's the absolute simplest definition. Docker is a platform that takes your application and packages it together with everything it needs to survive. And I mean everything. We're talking about the runtime, system packages, environment variables, configuration, and all of the dependencies. It takes the whole shebang and bundles it into an isolated environment called a container. Because its container holds literally everything the app needs, you can pick that container up, drop it on any machine in the world, and it'll run exactly the same way. It's brilliant. It completely solves that works on my machine problem because, well, you're just shipping the machine environment right along with the app.
And this brilliantly illustrates a common question. Don't virtual machines already do this? Well, actually, not quite. You see, a virtual machine runs a full-blown operating system inside another machine. A VM can take up gigabytes of space just for the OS alone, whereas a Docker container, that might just be a few megabytes. A virtual machine is super heavy, it's really slow to boot, and it just hogs resources. But a Docker container, on the other hand, it's just an isolated process. It shares the host machine's operating system kernel. Sure, it's got its own file system and network, but it's incredibly lightweight. Containers start almost instantly and use just a fraction of the resources that a VM would need.
Moving right along to Section 2, Core Docker Concepts Explained. Let's get down the foundational vocabulary you need to actually use this thing.
Now, perhaps the absolute most important distinction in the entire Docker ecosystem is the difference between an image and a container. An image is just a static template. It contains everything needed to run the app, sure, but it is not running itself. Think of it like a blueprint, or better yet, a recipe. A container, however, is the actual running instance of that image. So if the image is your recipe, the container is the cooked meal sitting right there on your table. You can use one recipe to cook as many meals as you want, right? Just like you can use one single Postgres image to spin up 5 completely different running Postgres containers.
Okay, so how do we actually write that recipe? Well, creating it requires a really simple flow using something called a Dockerfile. And a Dockerfile is literally just a text file. It's got step-by-step instructions that tell Docker exactly how to build your image. First, we tell it to use a base image, like Node.js. Next up, we create a working folder for our app and copy over our package files. Step 3, we install our dependencies. Step 4, we copy over the rest of our application code. And finally, Step 5, we expose port 3000 and tell it the exact command to start the app. When you run a Docker build command on this file, Docker just follows these exact steps to bake your static image.
Now, you might be wondering, do I have to build absolutely everything from scratch? Thankfully, no. That base image we just talked about, you grab that from Docker Hub. Docker Hub is a container image registry. Basically, it's just a massive online library where developers share Docker images. You can go there right now and pull down official pre-configured images for software like PostgreSQL, Redis, Nginx, or MongoDB. But hey, a really quick warning here based on our source material. If you're going into production, do not blindly trust random images you find on the internet. Always stick to official images or verified publishers to make sure your systems stay secure.
All right, let's jump into Section 3, Connecting the Moving Parts, because real apps are rarely just one isolated piece. So real-world applications usually have a bunch of different parts working together. A modern backend project might have a NestJS API, a Postgres database, and maybe a Redis cache. Now, trying to start all of those individually with long, tedious, manual Docker run commands, that would be a total nightmare. And that is exactly where Docker Compose comes in. Docker Compose is this amazing tool that lets you orchestrate multiple containers all at once using a single file called a compose.yaml file. In that one single file, you define your API service, your database, your cache, your port mappings, and your environment variables. Then, with one incredibly satisfying command, Docker Compose up, your entire local stack just springs to life in perfect harmony. Honestly, it is a total game changer for local development.
So, the crucial point is that containers are temporary by default. If you delete a database container, all the data inside it vanishes instantly. Poof, gone. Obviously, we cannot have that happen to a database, and that is exactly why we use Docker volumes. A volume is persistent storage that lives completely outside the temporary lifecycle of your container. By mapping your PostgreSQL container's data directory to a Docker volume, you ensure that even if the container is destroyed, updated, or randomly restarted, your critical data remains perfectly safe and completely intact.
Alongside storage, these containers actually need to be able to talk to each other, which brings us to Docker networks. When you spin up services with Docker Compose, they automatically join a shared network. But listen up, because here is a massive beginner mistake the source guide explicitly highlights. Inside a container, localhost just means the container itself. If your API tries to connect to your database at localhost, it's just looking inside its own isolated box, and it will fail. Instead, you have to use the service name you defined in your Compose file, like Postgres or Redis. The Docker network automatically routes that name over to the correct container. It's like magic once you get the hang of it.
Okay, moving into Section 4, Development versus Production. This is where things get serious as we look at deploying to the real world.
Now, this is really where we separate the casual users from the professionals. Because Docker makes local development so unbelievably effortless, it is incredibly tempting to just grab that exact same local Compose file, throw it onto a live server, and call it a day. But we really have to pause here and ask ourselves, is Docker actually ready for production out of the box like this? The short answer is yes. Docker is widely used in production everywhere, but it requires serious discipline. A production Docker setup simply cannot be lazy. It absolutely demands small image sizes, secure base images, and strict non-root user permissions just to keep things secure. You've got to have health checks so the system actually knows if your app has crashed, resource limits so one runaway container doesn't eat up all the server's memory, and you absolutely need robust secret management for things like your API keys and passwords.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how clearly it contrasts a lazy deployment with the professional one. Let's say you've got a bad Docker file. It uses the generic latest tag for its base image, which means your app might unexpectedly break if the underlying image suddenly updates. It runs as root, creating a massive security vulnerability. And it just lazily copies every single file in your folder, massively bloating the image size. Now compare that to a better Docker file. This one pins exact software versions for perfect reproducibility. It strictly enforces a non-root user. It filters out junk using a .dockerignore file, and it uses multi-stage builds to keep the final image incredibly small and efficient. Let me really emphasize those last two techniques, because for professionals, they are completely non-negotiable. First, a .dockerignore file. This works exactly like a .gitignore file. It stops Docker from accidentally copying your local .env files that hold your secret passwords, or those giant local node_modules folders straight into your image. Second, multi-stage builds. These are just brilliant. They let you use one stage to compile your code, using all the heavy compilers and build tools you might need, but then you copy only the compiled final output into a second, super tiny production stage. You literally leave all those heavy, vulnerable build tools behind.
Now, before we wrap up our production discussion, we really have to clear up a massive point of confusion in the tech world: Docker versus Kubernetes. Docker is mainly for building, packaging, and running containers. It essentially answers the question, how do I run this app? Kubernetes, on the other hand, is a vastly more complex orchestration tool. It answers a totally different question. How do I deploy, scale, restart, route traffic, and manage thousands of containers across dozens of different servers? The source material is super clear on this point. Use Docker first. Do not jump straight to Kubernetes if one server and Docker Compose already solve your problem. You really should only reach for Kubernetes when you actually need orchestration at massive scale.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Common Mistakes and Myths. Let's make sure you don't fall into these common traps.
Even with everything we've covered today, developers constantly fall into these exact traps. Let's run through them really quickly. Number 1, using the latest tag in production. We just learned why that's bad. Always pin your versions. Number 2, hard-coding your secrets directly inside the image instead of safely injecting them at runtime. Number 3, exposing unnecessary database or cache ports to the public internet instead of keeping them safely isolated on the internal Docker network. Number 4, flying completely blind with zero health checks or logging strategies. And number 5, expecting Docker to be some kind of magic wand.
And honestly, this is the harsh but necessary truth we have to face today. Docker makes packaging and deployment incredibly easy and consistent, but it absolutely does not make bad software good. If your application has terrible, unoptimized database queries, severe memory leaks, weak security, and absolutely no logging, Docker isn't going to fix a single one of those things. It is simply going to take your broken, leaky application and package it perfectly, allowing you to deploy those memory leaks with unprecedented speed and consistency. Docker is a genius at packaging for sure, but it does not fix bad application architecture.
Which brings us to our final takeaway for today. Docker is a tool, not a complete DevOps strategy. It's a phenomenal, industry-changing tool that ensures your software runs consistently anywhere you put it. But real production systems, they still require discipline. They need structured logging, monitoring alerts, backup strategies, and robust CI/CD pipelines. Docker is the foundation, but you still have to build the house. So, as you look at your own architecture today, I'll leave you with this. What other robust DevOps tools do you need to learn next to turn your isolated containers into an impenetrable automated fortress? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.